Sayyid Qutb was a deeply conservative Muslim, and he was horrified by what he saw at that dance. He wrote later of what he called the animal-like mixing of the sexes. The hall swarmed with legs. Lips met lips, chests met chests. The worst sight of all, he said, the outline of women's breasts in tight sweaters. Sayyid Qutb's essay about his time here, The America I Have Seen, became a sensation in parts of the Arab world. He hated everything about American culture: Hollywood movies, big cars, fast food.
His views on America are terrifying. They are terrifying because they're narrow, they're racist. He resented the way women and men interact in society. He resented nature, American materialism.
By the 1950s, he was a fierce critic of Arab governments that were trying to westernize their economies, societies, and political systems. He wrote 24 books urging the return to Sharia law and terrorism against the leading modern nation in the world, the United States. He was executed in 1966 for plotting to overthrow the government of Egyptian President Gamal Abdel Nasser. Qutb had become a rock star among budding radicals, even as Arab regimes were jailing and torturing his followers.
We are Muslims who believed in their religion.
Thus, in the jails of Egypt and other Arab tyrannies, was born Al-Qaeda. Qutb was read and revered by Osama bin Laden, Anwar al-Awlaki, and the current head of Al-Qaeda, Ayman Zawahiri. Then, in 1979, radical Islam explodes. In Iran, there was revolution. Enraged by the repressive rule of the American-backed Shah, popular protests drove him out. Angry mobs seized the American embassy. For 444 days, the United States watched helplessly as Americans were held hostage.
But there are indications tonight that a large number of armed Shiite Muslims...
At exactly the same time, November 1979, cataclysm in Saudi Arabia. The takeover of the Grand Mosque in Mecca, Islam's holiest site. It was stormed by heavily armed insurgents, demanding the overthrow of the American-backed Saudi king. These events were like rocket fuel for Islamic radicals. They had taken control of Iran. And in Saudi Arabia, the monarchy makes a fateful decision. It decides to appease the ultra-conservative Wahhabi clergy who preach a puritanical and intolerant interpretation of Islam, giving them free rein to run schools and mosques and oil money to spread their poisonous worldview to other Muslim countries.
It's hard to imagine a Muslim community anywhere on this planet that hasn't been touched by this ideology.
Remember, Saudi Arabia is one of America's strongest allies.
You are talking about a country that presents itself as the leader of the world's Muslims, the Muslim world.
The new Saudi regime is finally trying to contain the spread of radical Islam. But look at this interview with one of the most powerful men in Saudi Islam, the former Imam of the Grand Mosque. We have the same beliefs as ISIS, he says. We share their ideology, but we express it in a more refined way.
And that ideology is still being preached in Saudi Arabia from the mosques.
Remember, 15 of the 19 hijackers on 9/11 came from Saudi Arabia. So did Osama bin Laden. And one more person who is from Saudi Arabia, Tashfeen Malik, the wife in the San Bernardino killings.
Malik came from Pakistan. She later moved to Saudi Arabia with her.
So, Malik lived in both Saudi Arabia and Pakistan. And to what country has Saudi Arabia most lavishly and successfully exported its ideology? Pakistan. Its Saudi-funded madrasas and mosques preach a message much like the Saudi ideology of Wahhabism. Tashfeen Malik, the San Bernardino killer, is a product of radical Islam globalized by Saudi money. And one more visitor to Saudi Arabia, the Orlando shooter, Omar Mateen. He went there twice. Up next, a crucial question.